It all started with a simple notification, a small ping on his phone that would unravel his entire world. Jake Hastings sat at his kitchen table, sipping a cup of coffee as he absently scrolled through his emails. His wife, Emma, was upstairs getting ready for work. Their life was stable, predictable, and if he was being honest, a bit boring. But that was what people wanted, right? Stability, security, a life built on trust. At least, that's what Jake told himself. Yet as the sound of that notification echoed in the quiet kitchen, something in him stirred. A message popped up on his social media account from an unexpected source. It was Emma's younger sister, Lily. They hadn't spoken much beyond family gatherings, a few casual pleasantries exchanged at Christmas dinners or birthday parties. But there she was, popping up in his inbox. "Hey Jake, I found this hilarious meme that made me think of you. Hope you're doing well." A meme? Out of nowhere? Jake smirked and clicked on the message, curiosity piqued. It was a harmless joke, something about work-life balance, but the casual friendliness was disarming. He typed out a quick response, something witty to match her playful tone. Within minutes, she replied again. And just like that, an invisible thread was formed, a connection he hadn't realized he craved until now. Lily was the opposite of Emma in every way. Where Emma was practical, level-headed, and calm, Lily was spontaneous, wild, and a bit reckless. The more they chatted, the more Jake felt something light up inside him that he hadn't felt in years. Maybe it was excitement. Maybe it was danger. Either way, he couldn't stop himself from engaging with her more and more. Every evening after Emma had gone to bed, they'd exchange messages, teasing each other, sharing jokes, talking about everything and nothing. A week passed, and their messages took a turn. The banter became flirtatious, the conversation laced with undertones neither could ignore. "So," Lily wrote one night, "is it weird that we're chatting like this? I mean, you're my sister's husband." Jake stared at the message, feeling the pulse of his heart in his throat. It was a dangerous question, one that teetered on the edge of something both thrilling and catastrophic. He knew the answer he should give. He knew the right response was to shut it down, to stop whatever this was before it went any further. But instead, his fingers moved almost on their own, typing a response that sent his stomach into knots. "Maybe it's a little weird, but I like it." It didn't take long for their digital connection to spill over into real life. One evening, after weeks of late-night conversations and suggestive texts, Lily suggested meeting up. "Let's grab a drink, just to catch up. Nothing serious?" she wrote casually, but they both knew it was far from innocent. Jake hesitated for a moment. He'd managed to convince himself that the messages were harmless, just a bit of fun, a distraction from the monotony of his marriage. But meeting in person? That was different. That was real. It was crossing a line. Yet, when Lily followed up with a coy, "Or are you scared?" he found himself agreeing, his mind spinning with the possibilities and the risks. They arranged to meet at a bar a few towns over, where they were less likely to run into anyone they knew. He told Emma he was meeting up with an old friend from college, an excuse he had never had to make before in their 10 years of marriage. That evening, Jake stood in front of the mirror, fixing his hair and debating which shirt to wear. He knew he shouldn't care, that this was reckless, but something inside him burned to see where this would go. He felt alive in a way he hadn't in years, and it scared him how much he liked it. The bar was dimly lit, filled with the soft hum of conversations and clinking glasses. When Jake walked in, his eyes immediately searched for Lily. She sat at a table in the back, her long, wavy hair falling effortlessly over her shoulders. She looked more stunning than he remembered, her casual jeans and leather jacket giving her an air of rebelliousness that made his pulse quicken. As soon as she spotted him, a slow, knowing smile spread across her face. "Hey, stranger," she greeted him, her voice smooth and teasing. "Hey yourself," Jake replied, trying to sound casual, but his heart was racing. They ordered drinks and began talking, at first about mundane things, work, life, the usual pleasantries. But as the alcohol flowed, their conversation deepened. They laughed harder, leaned closer, their hands brushing accidentally, or maybe not so accidentally, across the table. Every touch sent electricity through Jake's body, and he knew, deep down, there was no turning back now. At some point, after their second round of drinks, Lily looked at him with those intense, mischievous eyes and said, "You ever think about what your life would have been like if you'd met me first?" Jake felt the question hit him like a punch to the gut. It was bold, direct, and cut straight through the pretense they'd been holding on to. There was no way to play dumb now. His mind raced back to the times he'd caught himself staring at her during family gatherings, wondering what if things had been different. He had always dismissed those thoughts, filed them away as fantasies too dangerous to entertain. "Honestly," he finally answered, his voice low, "I think about it more than I should." Lily didn't say anything for a moment, just stared at him with a small, knowing smile playing at her lips. Then she leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Then why don't we stop pretending?" Before Jake could react, she reached across the table and placed her hand over his, her touch sending a jolt through his entire body. The crowded bar faded into the background as all he could focus on was the feel of her skin against his, the smell of her perfume, the heat between them that had been simmering for weeks, waiting to explode. He should have pulled away. He should have stood up, left the bar, and gone home to Emma. But instead, he found himself tightening his grip on her hand, his body betraying his conscience. The night air felt thick as they left the bar together, walking side by side, their arms brushing against each other as they made their way to her car. "Lily," Jake started, but he didn't know what he wanted to say. Stop? Keep going? Everything felt muddled in his mind, torn between desire and guilt. She stopped and turned to face him, her eyes full of that same mischievous glint. "What's wrong? Afraid someone will see?" "No, it's not that." He trailed off, unable to find the words. Without warning, Lily took a step closer, closing the distance between them. She placed a hand on his chest, her touch both gentle and commanding, and Jake's breath caught in his throat. In that moment, every logical thought he had vanished, replaced by the overwhelming need to feel her against him. Their kiss was sudden, intense, and filled with a hunger they'd both been denying for far too long. The world around them disappeared, leaving only the two of them, tangled in a web of passion and danger. The kiss deepened, and Jake knew that this was more than just a fling. It was the beginning of something they could never take back. As they pulled apart, their breaths heavy, Lily whispered, "I've wanted this for a long time." Jake closed his eyes, his mind spinning with guilt and desire. This was wrong. He knew it was wrong. But as he looked at Lily, standing there with her lips still swollen from their kiss, all he could think about was how much he wanted her. "We can't," he started, but the words felt hollow, even to him. Lily smirked, her eyes glinting with challenge. "Can't or won't?" Jake hesitated, feeling the weight of the decision he was about to make. He could walk away. He could go back to his life, his wife, his stable world. But that world suddenly felt small, suffocating. And Lily was offering him something dangerous, something exhilarating, something forbidden. Before he could stop himself, Jake made his choice. "We shouldn't," he muttered, his voice thick with conflict. "But I don't want to stop." Lily's grin widened, and she reached for his hand again. "Then let's not—" They climbed into her car, and as they drove into the night, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that this was the beginning of the end, of everything. But as he glanced at Lily beside him, his heart pounding with anticipation, he realized something he wasn't sure he wanted to admit. For the first time in years, he felt alive. The weeks that followed were a blur of deceit and passion, a whirlwind of stolen moments and secret rendezvous. Jake and Lily fell into a dangerous rhythm, sneaking around in the shadows, meeting up whenever Emma was out or busy. Jake had never been the type to cheat, never even considered it before this. But now he was trapped in a web of lies, spiraling deeper every day. And each time he met Lily, each time they shared a kiss or spent the night together, the weight of what he was doing grew heavier. But so did his desire for her. Lily, with her carefree spirit and reckless charm, became the escape Jake never knew he needed. When he was with her, everything else disappeared. His responsibilities, his marriage, his conscience. She was freedom wrapped in a beautiful package, and he was addicted. But the more time he spent with her, the harder it became to maintain the facade with Emma. Emma wasn't blind, and Jake could see the cracks forming in their life. She would ask why he was coming home late, where he'd been, why he was suddenly so distant. Her questions were soft at first, gentle, but they grew more frequent, more probing. He made excuses, work, stress, needing time to clear his head, but he knew she could sense something was wrong. And deep down, he hated himself for the lies. One night, after another clandestine meeting with Lily, Jake came home to find Emma sitting at the kitchen table, her face pale, eyes rimmed with red. She looked up at him, her gaze filled with something between heartbreak and fear. "Jake," she started, her voice barely a whisper. "We need to talk." His stomach dropped, and for a moment, he thought she knew. Maybe she'd seen something. Maybe she'd figured it out. His mind raced through every possibility, every half-lie he could spin to cover his tracks. But as he sat down across from her, he realized that her pain came from somewhere else, something more immediate. "I've been feeling off lately," she said, her hands trembling slightly as she spoke. "I went to the doctor today and they ran some tests." Jake's heart pounded, his guilt momentarily eclipsed by fear. "What kind of tests?" he asked, his voice low. Emma's eyes filled with tears as she took a shaky breath. "They think it's cancer." The word hit him like a truck, slamming into him with the force of 1,000 truths he wasn't ready to face. Cancer. His mind reeled. The air in the room felt suffocating, and he realized in that instant how far he'd drifted from the woman sitting in front of him. This was his wife, his partner, the person he had vowed to love and care for in sickness and in health. And here she was, facing something so terrifying, and he was too wrapped up in his affair to even notice. For the first time in months, the weight of his actions came crashing down on him. He had been so consumed by his desire for Lily, by the excitement of sneaking around, that he had failed to see what was happening right in front of him. Emma was scared, and he had been too distracted to be there for her. "Emma, Jake's voice cracked, his throat tight with emotion, but he didn't know what to say. He wanted to comfort her, to tell her it would be okay, but the guilt gnawed at him, making the words stick in his throat. She reached across the table and took his hand, her touch gentle but firm. "I'm scared, Jake, but I need you with me. I can't do this alone." He looked at her, the woman he had married, the woman who had been there for him through everything, and he felt a wave of shame so strong it almost knocked him over. How could he have done this to her? How could he have betrayed her like this, when she needed him most? But even as the guilt washed over him, there was a part of him, a small, terrible part, that still longed for Lily, that still craved the thrill of their secret meetings, the heat of their forbidden connection. He hated himself for it, but he couldn't deny it. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of doctor appointments and tests, treatments and consultations. Jake threw himself into being there for Emma, doing his best to be the husband she needed. But the weight of his affair with Lily hung over him like a dark cloud, ever present and inescapable. He tried to break it off with Lily, tried to tell her that he needed to focus on Emma, but every time he saw her, every time she looked at him with that fire in her eyes, he faltered. "Jake, you don't have to choose," Lily whispered one night after they met in secret, her body pressed against his in the dark. "We can keep this between us. It doesn't have to change anything." But it had already changed everything. His marriage, his life, his very sense of who he was, had been warped by the affair. And now, with Emma's health deteriorating, The guilt was suffocating him. He knew he couldn't keep living like this, caught between two worlds, two women, two versions of himself. The breaking point came one evening when Emma collapsed in the living room, her body weakened from the treatments. Jake rushed to her side, calling an ambulance as his heart pounded in his chest. As he held her hand in the hospital, waiting for the doctors to tell him what was going on, something inside him finally snapped. He couldn't do this anymore. He couldn't keep living a lie. He had to make a choice. And as he looked at Emma, fragile and pale in the hospital bed, he knew what he had to do. The next day, Jake called Lily and asked to meet. They agreed on a park, neutral territory, away from the places where they'd shared their most intimate moments. When he saw her, his heart ached with the weight of what he was about to do. "Lily, I can't do this anymore," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "Emma's sick. She needs me. I can't keep lying to her, to myself." Lily looked at him, her eyes flickering with a mixture of surprise and sadness. "Jake, I don't want to lose you. We have something real." He shook his head, his heart breaking as he spoke the words he had been avoiding for so long. "I love you, Lily, but I can't have both. I made a vow to Emma, and I need to honor that. I can't be this person anymore." Tears filled Lily's eyes, but she nodded, understanding the finality in his tone. She stepped forward and kissed him one last time, a kiss filled with all the love, lust, and longing they had shared. But as they pulled apart, Jake knew it was over. He watched as she walked away, disappearing into the distance, and a part of him felt hollow, like he had just let go of something he could never get back. But another part of him, perhaps the better part, felt a strange sense of relief. The lie was over. The affair was done. Jake returned to Emma's side, determined to make things right. He poured everything he had into supporting her through her treatments, holding her hand through the darkest moments. He never told her about the affair. It was his burden to bear, his punishment for his betrayal. And as the months passed, Emma slowly began to improve. It wasn't easy. Their marriage wasn't perfect. The guilt of what he had done still gnawed at Jake, but he channeled that guilt into being the best husband he could be, the husband Emma deserved. They never spoke of the distance that had grown between them in those early months of her illness. Emma never asked, and Jake never told. But in the quiet moments, when they sat together in the evenings, watching the sunset from their porch, Jake held her hand a little tighter, grateful for the second chance he didn't deserve. And as the years went on, Jake found that while the thrill of his affair with Lily had faded, the steady, unwavering love he had for Emma was enough. More than enough. The storm had passed, but the scars it left behind would never fully fade. And Jake knew that he would carry the weight of his choices for the rest of his life. But at least for now, he was home,